Greetings. I'd like to take a look for a moment at a document that is one of the earliest of the so-called anti-missionary publications by Baptists. It is called a Declaration of the Reformed Baptist Churches in the state of North Carolina. It is more popularly called today the Kehukee Declaration because it was adopted by the Kehukee Baptist Association. What I'm going to be reading and maybe making a comment or two on is from the Gospel Advocate, Volume 4. The Gospel Advocate was a newspaper, universalist, anti-missionary paper, who copied this from another such paper called the New York Telescope. They begin this way. The reader recollects, no doubt, the account given in a former number of the secession of the Baptist churches at the South, in consequence of the modern schemes and institutions to spread the gospel. We now publish their declaration, which strikes a still deeper blow at them, and, as they are built upon the sand, the floods and winds of gospel truth will ere long entirely overthrow them, and not one stone of the fabric will be left upon another. What will the friends and benefactors of theological seminaries, Bible, missionary, and tract societies say now? Editor, New York Telescope. Declaration of the Reformed Baptist Churches in the state of North Carolina. Cast ye up. Cast ye up, prepare the way, take up the stumbling block out of the way of my people. Bible. Whereas, from 20 years' experience of the progress of missionary plans and proceedings among us, we find that no benefit has arisen to the cause of Christ or his church, but on the contrary, that they have been the fruitful sources of argument, strife, and contention, destroyed the peace, fellowship, and union of brethren, and even the ministers of different churches, more than anything else which has taken place in our denomination during the above period. And whereas we plainly see and realize that they have given rise to reproaches, backbitings, whisperings, and evil speaking, causing discord and disagreement amongst the Baptists on the subject of missions, whereby that brotherly love and fellowship which have heretofore been enjoyed and ought to abound are destroyed. We do most sincerely believe that it is the missionary proceedings and beggars that have come among us that have been the principal cause of our distresses, and which we see to be daily increasing, being well assured that missionary societies, Bible societies, tract societies, theological schools, etc., and begging money and hireling agents to beg for the support of such institutions, neither engage the attention nor receive the countenance in the example or practice of our early ministers, who bore the burden and heat of persecution and sufferings, and by their faithfulness and devotedness to the cause of truth, brought the Baptist society to that amount of numbers and influence which they have since attained. They would indeed have been ashamed and blushed at such conduct and proceedings as have been resorted to in order to get money and subscriptions under pretense of promoting religion and spreading the gospel, while in this day there are too many that seem to glory in these very proceedings and bring dishonor on the Christian name. We hesitate not to say that the societies and practices already referred to have no warrant from the New Testament, nor is the example and practice of Christ or the apostles. We also well know that our unhired and unlearned but laborious and faithful predecessors in the ministry brought the Baptist community to a greater state of purity, peace, and prosperity than all these unhallowed schemes and missionary operations have done, or ever will be able to do, with all their parade and begging of money. And indeed, ever since these modern schemes and societies have been invented, and persons of buy-ins and worldly principles have engaged in them for the sake of the honor or profit which they might bring to them, thereby forming a connection with this world, the cause of vital godliness, peace, and union has been declining among us. From these considerations, we do most solemnly declare a non-fellowship with all such societies and proceedings, and with all churches who hold members of such societies in them, and that we cannot, as independent churches of Jesus Christ, travel further in communion with those churches or individuals that disregard our feelings, break our peace, and disturb the tranquility of the churches to which we belong. We do therefore covenant and agree to, and with one another as independent and accountable churches of Jesus Christ, by our subscribing to endeavor to maintain the following articles, and to strive by divine assistance once more to restore purity of principles, brotherly love, peace and union among ourselves if possible. Article 1. Our body of churches shall be known by the name of the Reformed Baptist Association of Churches. Article 2. Knowing from long and painful experience the strife, contention, and evils caused in all the churches with which we are acquainted by missionary societies and their proceedings, and fully convinced that begging money under pretense of spreading the gospel and aiding the kingdom of Christ is without any warrant from the New Testament, or any example in the purest ages of the church, and that these modern schemes and missionary societies are only the inventions of men, and like all other such inventions will only prove a curse to the Church of God, we therefore declare that no person who is a member of any missionary society shall have membership in any of our churches while he continues in such society, or if any who are already members of our churches shall join such societies, they shall no longer be entitled to membership with us. And we furthermore declare that no missionary preacher or beggar, being known to be such, shall by any of us be invited into our pulpits, or have his appointments published by us, to beg and cheat the people, contrary as we conceive to the precepts of the gospel and the long-standing and ancient practices of the Baptists in these United States. Article 3. Believing that the tract societies often frame fictitious accounts and narratives to mislead the mind and promote the interest of their own sects, that one great design of these societies is to bring the youth of our country as they arrive to manhood to be of some sectarian opinion, and thus pave the way and time for an established religion and priestly dominion, and that such an event ought to be guarded against by every friend to true religion and the rights of conscience, we therefore declare that no person who is a member of any such tract society shall have membership with us except he first renounce his connection with the society. And no minister or preacher in membership with these societies shall be invited into our pulpits if it be known to us that he is a member of such societies. Article 4. Convinced that theological seminaries are the inventions of men, and have no warrant or sanction from the New Testament, nor in the example and practice of Christ and the apostles, who, when called to preach the gospel, never went to such places to be taught rhetoric, oratory, or other human accomplishments to prepare them for the work of the ministry. And knowing, moreover, that the Baptist denomination in these United States have long existed and flourished without any such institutions, and that there is at present a strife among the different sects, which shall be the greatest in the esteem and honor of this world, which strife must be injurious to the simplicity and purity of the religion of Jesus Christ. For already, since the commencement of these seminaries, and the numerous societies for their support, there is less vital and practical godliness, less harmony, peace, and Christian feeling, and than has ever been within our remembrance. And so far as we are able to see and judge from the Word of God and the past history of the church, we believe this new invention of training up young men for the ministry will be the greatest curse to our own, as well as other denominations, and in the end be productive of evils too numerous here to be described, substituting forms for realities, introducing a proud, pompous, and fashionable ministry instead of a humble, pious, and self-denying one. And since in all ages it has been like priests, like people, true religion under such a ministry must be expected soon to be reduced very low. We therefore feel constrained to declare a non-fellowship with all such human institutions and devices, and to discountenance all societies and traveling beggars for their support, believing them to be the emissaries and agents of Antichrist, and opposed to the true kingdom of Jesus Christ. In regard to the spread of the Bible and Bible societies, we believe that no one man is competent to the task of translating the Scriptures into another language in the short time which seems to be practiced in India. Nor do we think any 2 or 3 men of a particular sect very likely to give the heathen or others a correct and impartial version of the Bible by reason of those particular views and prepossessions which influence more or less the members of every religious persuasion. We fear indeed that there will be as many incorrect or spurious Bibles as there were in the time of King James, when he was induced to select 54 persons, eminent for learning and knowledge in the ancient tongues, to give his subjects our present translation of the Bible. The first Bible that was ever printed in America, we are informed, was printed for the Nantic Indians and in their tongue more than 150 years ago. Since that time, how many missionaries have been sent amongst the American Indians? How many of their youth have been educated for the ministry? And what incredible sums of money have been expended for converting the various tribes? And yet, where are the fruits of these mighty doings? And what has resulted from this vast expenditure? For want of a true call to this work, bad management, or through neglect to set a proper example, or all these put together, the Indians in almost every instance have only been made worse, more profligate and dissipated, and been brought to a more speedy and certain destruction. What has already been done may be done again, not only to the few remaining Indian tribes in this country, but to the inhabitants of India and elsewhere, particularly where no better instruments are employed, and much worse measures and proceedings are adopted. But with respect to Bible societies, so-called, who can believe these societies will advance the interest of Christ's kingdom? And the great men of the world, the mighty, the rich, the fashionable, and ungodly, are received into half-brothership with the church, and are made life members, managers, and directors in these societies for carrying on the work of the Lord and the conversion of the world, and all this to get more money and obtain greater renown in the eyes of the world. Will such men and such measures promote the humble and self-denying religion of Jesus Christ in the earth? As well may it be expected that darkness will produce light. It would be well for some of the officers and donors to these popular societies to recollect the proverb that charity should begin at home, and first learn their own Negroes to read the Bible, who have sweated and toiled for the very money perhaps they are giving to others. Are there not often poor laboring ministers and destitute individuals in their very neighborhoods who stand in need of and have a claim on their charity, whom they pass by and give with a liberal hand to some distant object for the sake of having the praise and honor of great and wicked men? To us it seems surprisingly strange that those who never, to us it seems surprisingly strange that those who neither read the Bible nor love its truths nor practice its precepts should understand to send the Bible to others, since they can feel no interest in the duties enjoined in it, if they do not even disbelieve its divine authority. We therefore declare our discountenance of and non-fellowship with all such societies and such connection between the church and this world, knowing that Christ's kingdom is not of this world, and no person who is a member of any such Bible society shall have membership with us, except he first renounce his connection therewith. For we are fully assured that if a worldly-minded Judas betrayed Christ, so will these worldlings in the Bible Society betray the cause and church of God. Article 6. Any person at present being a member of any of our churches, and feeling himself aggrieved by these our articles, where there is a majority in any particular church in favor of adopting them, shall have the liberty, by letter of dismission, to remove his membership and join any church he or she may think proper. It has already been stated that any who are now members of our churches may continue their membership by promising to renounce connection with such societies as are herein by these articles declared to be out of fellowship with us, and desisting from such practices as have been stated to wound and hurt the feelings of their brethren. For we claim the right of thinking for ourselves, and of worshiping God in the way we deem right, and also of choosing our own company for associates. These rights we believe to be given to us by our Maker. They were established by the blood and sufferings of our fathers, and are secured by the Constitution, and we feel every willingness freely to grant them to others. In testimony of agreement to the foregoing articles of our declaration, we, the undersigned Baptist churches, after due deliberation and decision in our conferences, have appointed our several clerks to sign the names of our churches and the number of our members belonging thereto, this 27th day of August, 1826. Well, there you have it. 1826, 6 years prior to the Black Rock Address. Yet remarkably similar in its content, a little briefer or more brief. We need to look just for a moment at a couple of things in there that I would like us to consider, since we have gone through this rather quickly. And that is, and this is where some people make a big mistake and judge the old Baptist as what? anti-missionary, antinomian, bunch of old do-nothings. We're sitting there on the high stool of do-nothing, etc., etc. But notice one thing, that there is nothing in this, nothing, against the preaching of the gospel. See, some people get the idea that the preaching of the gospel and missionary activity must be the same thing. And since we are opposed to mission societies, mission boards, the sending of missionaries, and we are against the preaching of the gospel. Nothing could be further than the truth. God never needed a missionary board, a missionary, a Bible society, a tract society, or any other society created by man to send a gospel preacher to the field where he'd have him go. Think with me just for a minute about Philip in the book of Acts. He went into the desert. He didn't go there to hold a revival. He didn't wait and say, well, now let's get up a mission society here so that we could have a little extra action going on here. You know, it costs something to travel today. No. He went, he heard a man read from the book of Isaiah. The Spirit said, join yourself to that chariot. He did it. He preached to him Jesus. The man believed and was baptized, dipped. And he went on his way rejoicing, and Philip was caught up and was no more. God sent the preacher to the person. God had prepared it all. He didn't need any kind of society. He didn't need any kind of board or organization to take care of it. He takes care of it. We got to save the lost. Jesus said, I am come to seek and to save that which is lost. We think, amen, oh, we got to send them out. No. If God's called a man, he'll go. He doesn't need to make a fact-finding trip. I can remember one time in a conditional primitive Baptist church whose pastor I knew published a little paper. They were sending one of their elders who had gotten him a dose of the missionary spirit, so to speak, down to Haiti on a fact-finding mission to see if he should go down there and preach the gospel. Brethren, friends, sisters, if God wanted him to preach the gospel in Haiti, in Africa, or in Nashville, he would have gone. You don't need to have fact-finding. None of that is necessary. You don't need to go to college. You don't need a seminary education. None of that's necessary. What's necessary is to be born of the Spirit and to be called of God. To go down as He tells you to go. After this declaration had been made, there's another publication that was an anti-missionary publication at the time called The Reformer, edited by one Theophilus Ransom Gates, very interesting man. I'd never heard of him till I had read Byron Cecil Lambert's History of the Rise and Progress of the Anti-Mission Baptist, or something to that effect. Since then, I obtained several bound volumes of the Reformer and have read them mostly with pleasure. I want to read a couple of articles from the Reformer about this. The first one is titled, Reformed Baptist Churches, communicated from a correspondent at the South for the Reformer. Mr. Editor, I have before me a letter received from a Baptist preacher in Wake County, North Carolina, stating that 9 churches of the Raleigh Association have rent themselves from that association in consequence of the annoyance that they have met with from missionary schemes and missionary beggars. They call themselves the Reformed Baptist Churches. I also saw, a few days since, a respectable Baptist preacher from the Noose Baptist Association who stated that he thought there were as many as 15 churches in that association ready to separate from the association for the same reason. He also stated that one church in the Kehookie Association had pointedly declared against the missionary and money-begging system. Many of the churches have long been grieved and troubled by the vile arts and schemes which have been resorted to for obtaining money under the pretense of spreading the gospel. And they are now fully determined to rid themselves of the abomination by denying their pulpits to all missionary beggars and removing from among them such members as continue their adherence to any of the popular and anti-Christian projects of the day. This is indeed making a bold stand and presents an ominous aspect to the great missionary works and doings among the Baptists throughout the United States. Whoever has had an opportunity to observe the pernicious effects of the missionary and money-begging proceedings in this country will want no other evidence to convince him that they are not of God. But the common people all along have been kept in a great measure from an open expression of their sentiments on this subject, in consequence of hearing it asserted by their head teachers and great men that none but the more ignorant and uninformed part of society would be found the opposers of missions, etc. It is time for these high-minded and ambitious leaders and professors in the church to know that this assertion is not founded in truth, and also to know that the strength and success of a cause in a community, as in a country, does not lie in a few would-be great men who are seeking their own interest and renown, but in the great body of the common people who are too honest to patronize wickedness and sufficiently informed to know when they are imposed upon, as well as independent enough not long willingly to submit to such imposition. When this class of people, either in a religious community or a country, by repeated grievances and impositions, once firmly and unitedly resolve to reform abuses and to extricate themselves from the evils and sufferings under which they labor, all the arts and sophistry of designing and interested men will not be able to shake their purpose or prevent the accomplishment of their object. From what I know, I have no hesitancy in saying there has always been a majority in the associations already mentioned that were opposed to the missionary proceedings and speculations which have been introduced among them. But this majority have been reproached and stigmatized as ignorant and uninformed, and they have borne and forborne until at length their aggrieved feelings will no longer be restrained, and they will seek that redress which they have it in their power to obtain. And so far as I am a prophet, I venture to predict that the Baptist denomination will be divided on the ground of these missionary and other schemes throughout the Union. It becomes the leading characters among the Baptists, therefore, to take a candid view of their proceedings and return to the plain and scriptural way of promoting the cause of religion and righteousness, which they were in when the Lord prospered them, and not adopt the schemes and practices of corrupt and worldly denominations, among whom true and humble piety has long since departed. Signed, a subscriber. We hope to be able by our next number to give a further account of these Reformed Baptist churches in North Carolina who have made such a bold stand against the missionary schemes and missionary beggars which now more or less infest every part of our land. Editor. That's something, isn't it? You know, I have seen it, and I want to quote from the other article from the Gospel Advocate that was copied from the New York Telescope, etc. I want to quote from this declaration at the beginning of it, because I've read, and I've seen it said, and I've heard it said, and it's touted up by missionary Baptists all over these United States. Why the Kehookie Association, this association, that association, whatever. They were missionary before they were anti-missionary. You got to realize something, brethren. All of these societies that were talked about all began, at least in this case, in the very early 1800s. Before that, there was none of them. How did the declaration begin? Whereas, from 20 years' experience of the progress of missionary plans and proceedings among us. This was no old thing that had been going on from the beginning, from the ancient times in America, when the Baptists were first planted. No, 20 years old. And yet people talk about it, particularly those that want to denigrate the old school primitive Baptists today, like this is what was done forever till you anti-missionaries came along. No, it was new things. And they went along with it. Rightly or wrongly, they went along with it. In this case, for about 20 years. And then it was enough. Enough. We've had enough. Let's go on in the Reformer. This is a little later. He says, the headline is Reformed Baptist Churches. We are promised further particular respecting the Reformed Baptist churches in North Carolina, but they have not been received in time for this number. We have been informed, however, by a respectable individual from that part of the country that the stand made by the Reformed Baptists against missionary beggars and their adherents has awakened all the zeal and activity of those engaged in the traffic of saving souls by contributions of money. The Savior drove all the traffickers in the temple out of it and pronounced them thieves. And what is it but theft and roguery to pretend that money is wanted to spread the gospel? True Christianity has ever been injured instead of being benefited when money has been resorted to for aiding in its promulgation. And if the Reformed Baptists can rid themselves of the gospel trafficking now carried on among the Baptists, they may escape that corruption which such a traffic will ever produce, and which it has in a great measure already produced in most of the churches of Christendom. Again, from the Reformer. And then he repeats the New York Telescope article in January of 1827. And we have this to go along with it. Forgive me. We have been furnished with a few particulars respecting the reception which this declaration met with in some of the associations in North Carolina, and they are here presented in as condensed a form as the case will admit. The writer informs us that he had the information from a person on whom he can depend. Said this person, "On the first Saturday in October, I attended the Kehukee Association for 3 days. The Declaration of the Reformed Baptist Churches was introduced and read on Saturday and ordered to lie on the table for consideration until Monday. Monday it was read again, when some debate in its favor followed. 2 members then spoke in a warm and earnest manner in favor of Bible and missionary societies only. The other schemes for getting money were left pretty much without defense. It was easy to perceive from the countenances of the members that all that was said in favor of the modern schemes and inventions of the present day to get money under the pretense of spreading religion had but little effect. The talk of those who undertook their defense seemed like lawyers pleading a bad cause before a jury well acquainted with all the circumstances and merits of the case. Among the numerous persons that attended the association with whom I conversed, I found but 4 persons against any one of the articles contained in the Declaration. Those in favor of the Declaration, however, did not appear desirous to enter into much debate respecting it, being willing to leave it to the churches composing the association to reject or adopt it as they judged most suitable, believing these churches the proper authority to make the decision. Accordingly, it was by a unanimous voice referred to the churches to decide respecting it in their letters to the next association. 5 churches belonging to this association, it is presumed, I was informed had already signed the Declaration, and in the 5 churches there were but 3 dissenting voices. I also learned that the churches in the lower part of the state would be unanimous in favor of the Declaration, and in the upper churches they would be much divided respecting some of the articles, but that the final issue would be a division in favor of the Declaration. At the News Baptist Association, when the association met and proceeded to business in the usual way by reading letters, etc., several churches complained, among other things, of the missionary proceedings which had been introduced among them. Others desired that the Lord's Day might not be profaned by interrupting preaching to collect money. After this, the declaration made by the Reformed Baptist churches was read and ordered to lie on the table for debate the next day. On the next day, the debate concerning the declaration commenced. After considerable had been said by some of the members, very much to the purpose, and a good deal by others, but little to the point, some of the delegates arose for the purpose of leaving the association, and considerable confusion took place. The moderator, together with other brethren, desired that the delegates would take their seats for a few minutes, and requested that they would remain with the association one more year, observing that perhaps times might get better. They at length came to the conclusion that if the association would take a vote on two things, and the decision was agreeable to their views, they would continue longer with the association. After hearing their proposals, the association agreed to do so. Both the things proposed were carried by a large majority, one of which was that no person under missionary patronage should be admitted to a seat in their next association. The brethren then gave each other the right hand of fellowship, and many seemed rejoiced at the result. Says our correspondent, quote, "Almost every man you converse with in this part of the country can tell you something about the tricks and schemes of the missionaries to get money, insomuch that many of the Baptists think of them as they do of Negro speculators. Indeed, if reports be true, they resort to measures to satisfy their craving desires for money, which men of only common honor would blush to own." The next one is, the following communication contains still later intelligence from North Carolina. For the Reformer. Mr. Editor, a few days since I was in company with a member of one of the Reformed Baptist churches in the Raleigh Association, who was at the meeting of the 9 Reformed churches noticed in your October number. Much to the joy of those 9 churches, there were 13 or 14 churches who entered the compact and are called the Reformed Conference. 2 more of the churches were ready to join as soon as some little difficulties could be settled in these 2 churches. The 13 churches have adopted nearly exactly the same articles as contained in the declaration of the 9 Reformed Baptist churches, declaring a non-fellowship with all money-collecting societies and anti-Christian associations. These churches, I am informed, have great peace and concord among themselves, and some of the other party were present at their meeting and wanted to know on what terms they could join and be united with them. They were told they must adopt the articles contained in the declaration, no part of which could be given up. I can assure you, Mr. Editor, that the cause of Reformation is making great progress among the people in these parts, and among the churches of nearly all sects. The few remaining advocates for modern missionary schemes excuse me. The few remaining advocates for modern missionary schemes do not now hesitate even to confess that the cause of missions in our state of North Carolina is nearly at an end. Indeed, the money-begging business, which has been carried on under pretense of promoting religion, has fallen into disrepute and become so odious to the people that the beggars can hardly expect to obtain enough to pay themselves. And the Board of Missions, at their meeting in 1825, passed a resolution that no missionary beggar should have more than he collected, and whatever he collected over his wages should belong to the board. Hence, as the begging business has become not only disgraceful, but is rendered so very uncertain in a pecuniary point of view, we may naturally conclude that the trade of begging for missions in these parts at least has nearly come to a close. Signed, a subscriber. Brethren, these things speak for themselves. Though I would not have chosen the name Reformed Baptist churches, since the brethren who took that name on themselves are no longer around, I'll not try and contradict them. We know what they didn't mean. They didn't mean Reformed in the sense of the Dutch Reformed, or the fact that has to do with the Reformation, Luther, Calvin, and all that. No, they were reforming themselves back to the old plan. The plan that was in existence from the days of Jesus Christ and his apostles until these new measures were introduced in the churches. Theological seminaries, Bible societies, tract societies, missionary societies, and the begging of money and the stating that money would be what's necessary to convert the world, save souls. Guide people into all truth. Oh yes, Holy Spirit. Can't work without means. Go lean on your means. Engage in your will worship. Grab a hold. See what in the world you can do with all that. And then when you make a bunch of professors of a religious tenet, those who have a natural faith in words on a page called a creed, but who know nothing of the power of the Spirit in their hearts, who have a name to live but are dead, who rejoice that these old hard shells are about gone from the face of the earth. I remember an anecdote one time from Elder Claude Carr, associate editor of the Signs of the Times, writer, minister. A man in Maryland, where Elder Carr lived, who hated the old Baptists. Saw obituary notices in the newspaper, and Elder Carr was preaching 2 funerals that day or the next. And he says, "Well, Claude, y'all are dying by 2s now. Soon there won't be any of you." Without missing a beat, Elder Carr looked at him and said, "When the last one's gone, you won't have time to swap horses." Those of you who wish the old school predestinarian, primitive, anti-means, anti-missionary Baptist were gone from the face of the earth, that the black rockers, the Kehukeites, the hard shells, the Ironsides, the straitjackets would be sent to their place, don't realize that you're not going to have time to swap horses either. when the last one is called to his home. If the Lord wills, we're going to add other things on this, maybe make some more just comments from the scriptures and history. I hope you'll join us. I hope you enjoy it. But more than that, and more than this, I certainly hope that you will consider these things prayerfully with the Bible in your hand. Find me a society. Find me money necessary. I'm not talking about relief of the poor, brethren. You'll find that all through the scriptures. Talking about what these things were created to do and what they still do. May the Lord bless us. It's truly my prayer.